Washington's clear-thinking headquarters. The Morning Majority, 5 to 9 on 630 WMAL.
637 on WMAL. Morning Majority. Good Wednesday morning to you. Brian Eva, Tori Clark, former Pentagon spokeswoman, in this morning. Joined now by Mike Rogers, chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Republican from Michigan. Congressman Rogers, good to have you. I'm curious, were you informed before the mission or before the media about the deal to get bin Laden, the mission to get bin Laden?
Yeah, actually. I have to give it, Leon Panetta was very good about this and kept us fully informed and sought advice and counsel along the way. I was notified of the compound and the possibilities back in January when I took over as chairman of the committee.
Well, that's fascinating because you know how secrets sometimes are leaked in Washington. The fact that it's been kept a secret so long, that's good news, I would think, Congressman, right?
Yeah, that's great news. And sometimes the Congress gets blamed for all the leaks, but I'll tell you, the executive branch is a sieve-like in its own right. Yeah. As a matter of fact, the Bush administration certainly found that out. There was a lot of folks in the administration, not in the appointment process, but who worked there, who had agendas that would leak information. Was just maddening to me as an old FBI agent.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Now, when you look at this, the information that came from different sources, detainees at Guantanamo, perhaps people who we had at black sites as well, what do you make of the putting of the pieces together to figure out who this courier was, identifying him, and then finally getting that compound and then giving the go-ahead to try and get bin Laden?
Yeah, and if I can, I'd like to put it in all context because, you hear a lot that maybe this happened since the president was elected or it had nothing to do with information that was gleaned at Gitmo or enhanced interrogations. And the problem is there's a piece of truth in all of it except for the 2008 piece. 70% of what we know, and this was told to me by senior intelligence officials, 70% of how al-Qaeda finances, how they move weapons, people, how they plan operations, their security around themselves, all of that came out of Gitmo and other interrogations. So think about a little piece of information that came in an interrogation about 5 years ago that gave the nickname, an Arabic nickname, for someone with an Arabic name who was could be in Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen, Somalia, or maybe even Pakistan. Good luck. We think this is the guy that can get you to bin Laden. I mean, think of how difficult that task is. Oh, and by the way, won't be using his real name and won't be talking to people and hanging out with people who use their real names. Mm-hmm. I mean, a very difficult task indeed. And so that little piece of information was applied to the 70% of what we know about how they work, gleaned from Gitmo, gleaned from enhanced interrogations. And then from there, they just kept building a case and painstakingly, over the 5 years, tracked down somebody that kept fitting the description and getting closer, and finally were able to watch him at one point go to this compound. And that's really what turned the tables on bin Laden. But it was a long, hard slog for the intelligence community to get there.
I wonder if you can confirm this. It's been reported that essentially there were 3 detainees who gave us the information about that nickname you're talking about that ultimately led to the informant who was housing bin Laden. One was Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. The other was Mohammed al-Qahtani, who was apparently the 20th hijacker who we picked up in Afghanistan and who was taken to a black site. We know Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was waterboarded as well. And the other was Abu Faraj al-Libi, who was picked up in 2005 by Pakistani officials and then handed over to the CIA, also taken to a black site. Did a lot of the information come from those 3 guys? Can you confirm that?
Well, I cannot confirm specific pieces of information or where it came from, but I can tell you that the collection of all of the people that were interrogated during that whole time period led to getting the right information and building a case over time.
Congressman, first of all, thank you for being with us. I got to believe you're probably really busy right now, so taking the time to do this, we appreciate. But I have some familiarity with how the military has been transforming in the last several years to fight these very unconventional 21st century fights. Do you see the intel community similarly transforming? Is this a sign, their ability to piece together this information, as difficult as it was, do you see this as a sign, maybe a defining moment, that the intel community is similarly transforming?
You know, I do, and sort of. I'll tell you one thing. Watching the intelligence community, and again, I'm a former FBI agent, so I
Right.
get to see it pre 9/11. To watch it transform, and it did it every year. So some notion that it did it in the last few years just because we've got bin Laden just simply isn't true. I have never seen the infusion of technology and cross-pollination with the intelligence agencies forward to collect information that have been really devastating to the al-Qaeda network. It's inspiring to watch. And yes, they have transformed. The kinds of things they can do with just a small piece of information now is unbelievable. It's just shocking.
Is there a reason for that, more of that cooperation right now?
Well, it started under the Bush administration when they said, you all have to start playing well together. I mean, we cannot have another 9/11. And so it started this transformation. And, when you're on a war footing, sometimes in D.C. they forget that we're on a war footing. But I'll tell you, the people who are in places like Yemen and Afghanistan, Iraq, and even Pakistan and other places, they know they're on a war footing. And so they tend to work together, and I think that's very common in conflict zones. And so what you saw was such a heavy footprint of our intelligence agencies there, all coming together. They sometimes are housed, all in the same workspace, and that just really pushed them to integrate and to cooperate. And I tell you, it is really amazing what these people are doing. And I tell you, they work some hard hours just to make an inch closer to finding that compound. I mean, real hours for years. I mean, they were playing chess, not checkers in this game.
Right. What about Pakistan? Is there any doubt in your mind that Pakistani intelligence knew bin Laden was at that compound, and is there any evidence to suggest that they did, and what can we do about it?
Well, there's no evidence today that I have seen that says that the institution of the ISI, the Army, the government knew about it. Listen, we know that ISI, their intelligence services, have been penetrated by sympathizers to more extremists, to al-Qaeda, to the Taliban, to the Haqqani network, which is very supportive of al-Qaeda in the tribal areas, but more of an organized crime group in my mind. So you have all of those things working at it. But, there's some materials I was able to review yesterday that showed me that at least today, I do not believe that the institution, the leadership of those organizations knew he was there. I think they're just absolutely embarrassed, which we ought to use to our advantage. But we can't discount the fact that somebody in their organization may have known that they were there. Here's the problem. This is like, a bad marriage that you got to stay in.
Right.
One day they're with us, one day they're not. 600 people have been arrested over the last decade in the tribal areas with the cooperation of the Pakistanis. And these are some pretty, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed being one of them. Berater was just arrested with assistance of the Pakistanis recently, a very senior lieutenant, if you will, in the al-Qaeda network in Pakistan, in the settled area. So they have cooperated. They've sent troops into the tribal areas and took thousands and thousands of casualties fighting Taliban and al-Qaeda. So they haven't been horrible partners, but boy, when they do, something like this happens, it just absolutely makes you scratch your head and wonder about them. But we cannot walk away from the Pakistanis. We have too many bad guys there that we need their help with.
Congressman, great to have you on the show. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Mike Rogers, Republican from Michigan, House Intelligence Committee.